Now get your dirty hands off my youngster. The gentle classical music that was playing in the background suddenly stopped as Robert Whitman's voice reverberated through the mansion like thunder. After months of complete seclusion, Kesha Washington, 32, froze in the center of the living room while clutching Tyler's tiny hands tenderly. Tyler is an 8-year-old autistic kid who had just begun to smile. The 45-year-old millionaire stood at the doorway of the room, his $3,000 suit immaculate, but his face twisted in a fury Kesha had never saw. 3 Manhattan high society guests stood next to him, watching the sight with dismay and astonishment, as though they had witnessed a crime in process. Robert moved closer to Kesha, who immediately positioned herself between him and Tyler, saying, "How dare you touch my son without permission?" The shouts scared the boy, and he started rocking back and forth, which Kesha knew was a sign of stress from taking care of him for 2 years. Despite feeling her blood boiling in her veins, Kesha calmly said, "Mr. Whitman." Tyler was having a breakdown, and the music helped him relax. "You just completely forgot his place in this house," Robert said, interrupting her. "He asked to dance, and you are not the therapist, the nanny, the cook, and most definitely not the right person to touch his son." A blonde woman with pricey jewelry was among the guests, and she murmured loudly enough for everyone to hear. Kesha felt the humiliation burn like fire on her skin, yet she remained composed with a dignity that infuriated Robert even more. "You need to be more careful about who you hire. These people sometimes feel too comfortable in our homes." She had been much more than a cook at that home for 2 years. Having studied child development and earned a degree in nutrition from Columbia University, she had posed as a domestic worker for reasons no one there could fathom. "Tyler, come here." "Now," Robert told curtly. The boy's big eyes were filled with terror and confusion as he glanced between Kesha and his father. Tyler had danced, laughed, and truly connected with someone for the first time in months. And now, it was all being ruined by a racist assault, masquerading as paternal protection. "Kesha is leaving," Robert told Tyler icily. The comments were like bullets to Kesha, but what stung her the most was Tyler's response. "You will no longer play with her. I will find a nanny who is better suited to his needs." The youngster started to weep quietly, the kind of weeping she had come to understand as profound anguish. Not only would Tyler lose Kesha, but he would also lose the only person in the house who really understood him. Robert remarked, pulling out his wallet and flinging several hundred bills to the ground. "There's her severance pay. Gather your belongings and leave immediately." Kesha looked at the money scattered across the Italian marble and then at Robert. In that moment, something changed in his eyes. The careful submission that she had maintained for 2 years disappeared completely, replaced by a cold determination. That made Robert instinctively take a step back. "Very well, Mr. Whitman," she said, her voice calm, but laden with a dark promise. "I'll get my things." As she climbed the stairs to the maid's room, where she kept her belongings, Kesha smiled. For the first time since she had entered that house, Robert Whitman had no idea who he was really firing. He didn't know that she had spent 2 years methodically documenting every financial crime, every tax evasion scheme, every bribe she had witnessed in that mansion. And most importantly, he didn't know that the folder hidden under her mattress contained enough evidence to destroy not only her reputation, but her entire fortune built on corruption and lies. If you're wondering how a simple cook managed to obtain such devastating information about a millionaire, subscribe to the channel, because this story of revenge is just beginning. And what Kesha did in the next 48 hours would forever change the lives of everyone involved. 20 minutes later, Kesha was in the kitchen collecting her professional chef's knives while Robert celebrated with his guests in the living room. Cruel laughter echoed through the mansion like nails on a chalkboard, each comment more venomous than the last. "Did you see how she reacted when I put her in her place?" Robert boasted, pouring $500 a bottle Scotch whiskey. "These people need to know who's boss. I give them a decent job, and they think they can mingle with us." Margaret Thornfield, wife of a senator, laughed as she adjusted her pearl necklace. Good thing you acted quickly, Robert. Imagine if someone had filmed that scene. A black cook dancing with his disabled son. The tabloid press would love to twist that. Kesha paused when she heard these words, his fists clenching involuntarily. For 2 years, she had swallowed comments like these, each one piling up like fuel for a fire she kept carefully under control. But Robert had no idea who he was messing with. What neither of them knew was that Kesha Washington was no ordinary cook. The daughter of a renowned Detroit neurosurgeon and a civil rights attorney. She had graduated magna cum laude from Columbia University before earning a master's degree in child development from Harvard University. Her disguise as a domestic worker served a very specific purpose. 2 years earlier, Tyler had been a patient of Dr. James Washington, Kesha's father, for consultation about possible surgical interventions for his neurological conditions. During the consultation, Dr. Washington discovered irregularities in Tyler's medical records that suggested deliberate medical negligence on the part of the staff Robert had hired. When Dr. Washington attempted to report his findings, Robert used her influence to discredit the doctor, threatening her license and destroying her reputation. Dr. Washington died of a heart attack 3 months later. Stressed by the smear campaign that he had orchestrated against her, Kesha had infiltrated the Whitman household not for money but for revenge, and for 2 years she methodically documented every crime she witnessed. Robert laundered money through fake foundations, bribed health inspectors to approve his unsafe restaurants, and evaded millions in taxes through sophisticated schemes. Even more devastating, Kesha discovered that Robert had defrauded life insurance companies by faking disabilities for Tyler that didn't exist, illegally collecting government benefits while flaunting his wealth. Every suspicious phone conversation had been recorded using devices Kesha had strategically planted around the house. In the kitchen, she opened his hidden laptop and sent an encrypted message to Dr. Michelle Torres, a federal prosecutor specializing in financial crimes and a former college classmate. Package ready for delivery. Operation Manhattan initiated. Robert continued his celebration in the living room, completely unaware that his guests were also being recorded as they admitted to participating in corrupt schemes. Margaret Thornfield had just confessed how she used charitable foundations to launder money for her senator husband. Kesha went upstairs one last time to say goodbye to Tyler, who was in his room, rocking in the corner, silent tears streaming down his face. Tyler is better off without that woman, Robert said too loudly, clearly under the influence of alcohol. Children like Tyler need firm boundaries, not excessive affection from maids who don't know his place. Kesha's eyes glowed with fervent anticipation as he spotted her. Are you returning? It was one of the few times since Kesha had met him that he had managed to form a complete sentence. Tyler said in a faint, hesitant voice. Not in the way you imagine, Kesha replied, kneeling beside his side. But I promise you that things will change very soon. And when they do, you'll have people around him who really care about him. Tyler hugged her tightly, as if he knew he was saying goodbye to more than just a cook. He was saying goodbye to the only person in the house who had treated him like a human being. Walking down the stairs for the last time, Kesha paused at the door to the living room, where Robert continued to humiliate her memory to entertain his guests. Problem solved, he declared. I'll never have to worry about unsuitable people influencing my son again. Kesha smiled coldly. Robert Whitman was about to discover that he had made the biggest mistake of his corrupt life. What he didn't know was that firing Kesha wasn't the end of his problems. It was just the beginning of an operation of justice that she had meticulously planned since the day she set foot in that mansion. As she walked toward the exit, Kesha activated the last recording device she had hidden in the main hall. In 48 hours, Robert would discover that underestimating a black woman with a Harvard degree wasn't just racism. It was terminal stupidity. 48 hours after being fired, Kesha was sitting in the modest apartment she shared with her sister in Brooklyn, meticulously organizing 2 years of evidence against Robert Whitman, photographs of fraudulent financial documents, audio recordings of involuntary confessions. Intercepted emails revealing bribes to politicians, all catalogued with a precision of someone who had been preparing for this moment since her first day on the job. "Are you sure about this, Kesha?" His doctor, Michelle Torres, federal prosecutor, examined the documents scattered across the dining room table. "This is enough to take down not just Robert, but half of Manhattan's elite. We're talking about tax evasion in the tens of millions, disability benefits fraud, money laundering through fake foundations." Kesha smiled coldly. "Michelle, my father didn't die of a heart attack. He was systematically murdered by the smear campaign Robert orchestrated when Dad discovered that Tyler was being unnecessarily medicated to simulate more severe disabilities just so Robert could receive government benefits." Michelle stopped flipping through the documents and looked directly at her friend. Dr. James Washington was his father, the neurosurgeon who was discredited by the media 2 years ago. "My father discovered that Robert was drugging Tyler with medications that intensified his autistic symptoms." Kesha continued, her voice controlled but heavy with pain. "When Dad tried to report this to the medical board, Robert used her network of contacts to destroy his reputation. She planted false evidence of medical misconduct, bribed patients to give false testimony, and orchestrated a media campaign. The revelation was devastating." Dr. James Washington had been one of the most respected neurosurgeons in the country before his career was destroyed by accusations that were never proven but ruined his professional and personal life. Dad died believing he had lost everything because of a medical error he never made, Kesha whispered, holding a photograph of her father in his white coat. He never knew he had been the victim of a calculated conspiracy to silence him. Michelle was silent, processing the enormity of the situation. "Kesha, this isn't just about financial justice. It's about posthumously clearing his name." "It's about much more than that," Kesha corrected, standing up and walking to the window, overlooking the city. "It's about Tyler. That boy is being poisoned daily by unnecessary medications that are hindering his real development. Robert profits from his own son's suffering." Meanwhile, at the Manhattan mansion, Robert Whitman celebrated what he considered a complete victory. He had gotten rid of the problematic maid and hired a new German cook. Blonde and quiet, who knew his place and never questioned orders. "Problem solved," he commented on the phone to Margaret Thornfield. "Some people need to learn boundaries the hard way now. Tyler can be treated properly without unnecessary emotional interference." What Robert didn't know was that, at that very moment, federal agents were obtaining search and seizure warrants based on the evidence Kesha had provided. Dr. Torres had worked for 2 days straight, building a case that would turn the investigation into one of the largest financial fraud operations of the decade. "The operation will take place on Monday," Michelle informed Kesha during an encrypted call. "We're going in at the same time. Search and seizure at the mansion, freezing of all bank accounts, opening of a congressional investigation into the politicians who accepted bribes, and immediate cancellation of fraudulent benefits." "What about Tyler?" "He will be temporarily removed from custody and undergo an independent medical evaluation. If we find that his unnecessary medication is causing permanent custody loss, Robert will lose custody permanently." Tyler was locked in his room, sedated with drugs that suppressed not only his unwanted autistic behaviors, but also her natural personality and ability to develop. The boy who had danced and smiled with Kesha now spent his days in a vegetative state, earning $4,000 a month in government benefits for Robert. "Sunday will be a special day," Robert told the guests, lifting her crystal glass. "His investments will be tripled through an international cooperation." What he didn't know was that Sunday would indeed be special, but not for the reasons he imagined. At 6 o'clock on Sunday morning, while Robert slept peacefully in his master's suite, Kesha was finalizing the last details of an operation she had planned with the precision of brain surgery. She had discovered something that would make her revenge even more devastating. Robert was not only a fraudster, he was also a murderer. The evidence proved that he had deliberately sabotaged the medical treatment of 3 previous autistic children to maximize the benefits he received, resulting in the death of 2 of her. Michelle, Kesha called one last time before the operation. I found something else. Robert isn't just a con artist. He's a man who kills children for money. The revelation was so shocking that Michelle was silent for several seconds. Kesha, that changes everything. We're no longer talking about tax fraud. We're talking about multiple homicide. On Sunday morning, when Robert woke up and went downstairs to eat his $300 breakfast prepared by the new German cook, he had no idea that her life of privilege was about to end so brutally that it would make her previous humiliation seem like child's play, because Kesha Washington wasn't just an educated black woman seeking justice. She was a force of nature disguised as a maid, and Robert was about to discover that underestimating someone with that level of intelligence and determination wasn't just stupid, it was social and financial suicide. Monday, 6:15 a.m., Robert Whitman woke up to the sound of sirens and violent banging on the front door of her mansion. Still in her silk pajamas, he went downstairs, irritated, figuring that some neighbor had had trouble with alarms going off. FBI opened the door immediately. The authoritative voice pierced the marble and bulletproof glass like a dagger. Robert felt the blood freeze in his veins. Through the security camera, he saw at least 15 federal agents in bulletproof vests. Some carrying seizure equipment. There must be some mistake, he muttered to himself. But his hands trembled as he unlocked the door. Dr. Michelle Torres showed her badge and the search and seizure warrant before Robert could even utter a word. Robert Whitman, his investigation is ongoing for federal benefits, fraud, tax evasion, money laundering, bribery of public officials, and criminal negligence resulting in death. The list of charges continued for another 30 seconds. Each crime, read with surgical precision as agents spread out through the mansion. This is ridiculous, Robert exploded, his face red with indignation. I'm going to sue you all for trespassing. My lawyers will. His lawyers have already been notified, Michelle interrupted coldly, and his bank accounts were frozen at 5 o'clock this morning, including the offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that you thought no one knew about. It was at that moment that Robert saw Kesha calmly walk through the front door, no longer wearing a cook's uniform, but a professional suit that revealed exactly who she had always been. Behind her, Tyler walked hand in hand with a girl of about 12 whom Robert had never seen before. You, Robert whispered, his voice thick with disbelief and growing horror. Dr. Washington Kesha. For the first time, she gave a formal introduction. The daughter of the neurosurgeon you methodically killed 2 years ago, Dr. James Washington. And this is Destiny, my niece, who specializes in child behavioral therapy. The ground gave way under Robert's feet. Not possible. You're a chef. We looked up her references. Kesha grinned so icily that Robert recoiled involuntarily. You looked up his references to Kesha Williams, a persona he created especially to break into your house. Since Dr. Kesha Washington was never a cook, she never required references to work in the culinary arts. Michelle came over with a box of proof. Whitman, Mister, we have 300 photos of fictitious financial papers, 2,000 hours of audio recordings, intercepted emails that showed 12 public officials were bribed, and fabricated medical records that showed you purposefully gave Tyler unnecessary medications to exacerbate her autism. In addition, Michelle went on, her tone becoming even more solemn. We have proof that you used the same fraudulent plan on 3 prior children, causing 2 of them to intentionally overdose on drugs and die. Robert leaned against the wall and staggered. None of this can be proven by you. Kesha showed Robert the screen of a tablet she had taken out of her pocket. 3 months prior, he had recorded a video in which he described in great detail to Margaret Thornfield how over-medicating autistic children would maximize government benefits. Surprise, replied Kesha coolly. Every conversation you've had in the last 2 years has been recorded. Every suspicious phone call, every drunken confession, every moment you revealed her true monstrous nature. Yes, dear, Kesha knelt beside the boy. And this time, no one will separate us. Robert watched the interaction between Kesha and Tyler. finally understanding that he had lost much more than money and freedom. He had lost the only person who genuinely cared about his son. For 2 years, Kesha stood up and faced Robert. Power. I watched you poison an innocent child out of greed. I documented every unnecessary dose of medication you forced Tyler to take. I recorded every conversation where you celebrated the benefits you received from his suffering. Michelle showed a second tablet. His bank records show that over the past 5 years, you have received $240,000 in fraudulent benefits using Tyler as bait. Meanwhile, you denied him real therapies that could have helped his development. And there's more, Kesha continued relentlessly. Destiny here is a medical student and child development specialist. For the past 3 months, she has been working with Tyler remotely through video calls I made secretly to reverse the damage you caused with excessive medication. At that moment, Margaret Thornfield was escorted away by the police in handcuffs, shouting about her rights and threatening to sue everyone. 2 other guests from Saturday's dinner were also arrested. She is autistic, just like Tyler, but, unlike what you did to his son, our family has always treated her autism as a gift, not a source of income, Kesha explained. As for Destiny, she has an IQ of 162. As Kesha saw Robert in handcuffs, she said, "The empire you built on the suffering of innocent children is over. But this isn't revenge, Robert, it's fairness. Allowing you to live in the hope that you might avoid the repercussions would be revenge." However, what would transpire with Tyler and Kesha over the next few weeks would demonstrate that sometimes justice entails more than just punishing the guilty, it also entails fully reconstructing the lives he attempted to ruin. 6 months later, Kesha Washington, a tenured professor in the Child Development Department, entered Columbia University's hallways. A beautiful smile that had never left her face contrasted with his spotless white lab coat. Now that he was taking the right medicines and not the ones Robert had made him take, Tyler and Destiny dashed across campus. They are both taking part in a groundbreaking inclusion program for kids with neurodeficiencies. Dr. Washington summoned Dean Dr. Peton, who came forward with a look of sincere appreciation. The program he developed has produced remarkable results. Our specialists believe Tyler and the other kids couldn't make progress, but they have. For the first time in his life, Kesha saw Tyler engage with other kids in a natural way. Without the pharmaceutical limitations his father had placed on him, his cognitive development flourished. Tyler always had so much potential. Professor Peton, all he needed was someone to trust in him rather than take advantage of his pain. Conversely, Robert Whitman was seeing how quickly an empire founded on bigotry and crime can collapse. Given a 25-year prison term without the chance of release, in addition to losing his $200 million fortune, he had also lost any remaining social standing. At the federal penitentiary, a convict exclaimed, "Hey, celebrity. While taking a shower, I've heard you enjoy poisoning kids to make money." Her shaky hands held a plate of food that cost pennies compared to the 1,000 meals he used to attend, and Robert kept his eyes down. In here, that has a special name. It was the ideal irony. In a prison where inmates were ranked according to the crimes they had done, the man who had degraded others based on their skin color and socioeconomic class was now the most hated. After being detained as an accomplice, Margaret Thornfield lost both her freedom and her marriage. In order to save his political career, his senator husband filed for a public divorce, leaving her stranded in a women's prison where she learnt that privilege does not equate to respect or safety. The adoption process is complete. Dr. Torres called Kesha late in the afternoon. Officially, Tyler is now his son, and $2 million has already been granted by Robert's Victim Compensation Fund to cover his special education as well as the special education of other affected children. When she hung up, Tyler rushed to Kesha, his eyes gleaming with an intelligence that had never been given the chance to blossom. He uttered the words Robert had always maintained he would never be able to pronounce, "Mummy Kesha," with clarity. "May I play the piano today?" "Of course, my love," Kesha said, petting the boy's hair, who had evolved into something far more than a revenge quest. His heart had become his son. Waiting for you to play that new tune is destiny. The small Brooklyn flat had given way to a large Queens home, funded by a respectable salary Kesha received from changing lives with education rather than with shady money like Robert's estate. Tyler spent hours writing songs in his own music studio, displaying an undiscovered creative brilliance. What is the most ironic aspect of this entire narrative? At a joyous meal, Kesha said to Michelle, Tyler was always described by Robert as a burden and an unrecoverable medical expense. These days, music conservatories study Tyler's compositions as examples of neurodivergent brilliance. Michelle held up her glass of wine and giggled. The genius Robert attempted to stifle with drugs has turned into a living example of his lack of understanding of the true worth of human beings. In prison, Kesha got an unexpected letter on the final Sunday of October. It was written by Robert in a poor script that revealed the anguish of someone who had finally realized the seriousness of her decisions. Formally, the letter started, Dr. Washington, I am aware that I am unworthy of his pardon. However, I want you to know that I now realize what I actually did. To all the kids I used to earn money for, not just Tyler. I see Tyler smiling and playing the piano on TV, and I realized that if I hadn't been a monster, it could have been like that all along. Kesha read the full letter, in which Robert admitted to further atrocities and pleaded with her to continue to love Tyler in a way he had never known how. Ultimately, a single sentence encapsulated 2 years of expertly planned retaliation. You taught her who my son ought to have been, in addition to saving him. Every now and again, Tyler, who is 9 years old and whose social abilities have astounded all the specialists, would inquire about his biological father. Kesha always gave honest, age-appropriate answers. People were harmed by his first father's illness. He is currently in a position where he is learning how to improve. Universities all over the nation used Kesha and Tyler's story as a case study, demonstrating that neurodiverse kids may flourish when they are loved unconditionally rather than being used as a means of making money. By utilizing her personal experience to teach families about acceptance and healthy development, 13-year-old Destiny has emerged as a national advocate for the rights of exceptional children. 3 years ago, I was just a black woman disguised as a cook in a racist mansion, Kesha said in a Harvard University speaking engagement. Tyler, seated in the front row of the audience, proudly applauded the woman who had turned her medical nightmare into a musical dream come true. Today, I am the mother of an extraordinary child who has taught me that the best revenge is not to destroy our enemies, but to build something so beautiful that his evil becomes irrelevant. He was already writing symphonies at the age of 9, something that took decades for experts to perfect. Out of avarice, Robert Whitman attempted to destroy a black child and an autistic youngster. But instead, he created 2 revolutionary forces that altered national laws pertaining to children's rights. Achieving greatness that dwarfs those who attempted to lessen his grandeur is the best form of retaliation, not paying back the harm we have endured. If he was moved by this tale of justice, perseverance, and unwavering love, please subscribe to the channel for more tales that demonstrate how karma occasionally requires a little assistance from brave individuals prepared to stand up for what is right. Spread the word to others who need to be convinced that every child deserves to be loved just the way they are, and that every monster can be vanquished.